Lorgar Aurelian, or the Urizen, meaning wisest of the wise in Colchisian, is the Primarch of the Word Bearers, one of the original 20 Space Marine legions. Fiercely religious and prone to fanaticism, Lorgar yearned for a greater meaning to his existence besides conquest. This quest, and the tragic events that befell his perfect city of Monarchia, led him to become the first Primarch to become seduced by the powers of chaos. Hiding his new allegiance for many years, he helped to orchestrate the events that led to the Horus Heresy. He has since ascended to daemonhood and bears the self-appointed titles of Archpriest of the Primordial Truth and Minister of Chaos Absolute. The newly born Primarch Lorgar vanished from the gene labs on Luna while still an infant, along with the other 20 Primarchs. After his spiriting away, he was found on the desert feudal planet of Colchis. A nomadic tribe of outcasts known as the Declined under the chieftain Primordial found the infant's shattered capsule and took him in. They named the child Lorgar, or the Raincaller. 17 days later, Lorgar, already grown to the size of a young child, was discovered by Cor Phaeron. Phaeron was an exiled priest of the Covenant of Colchis, the dominant state religion of the planet. Immediately sensing greatness in the boy and believing him blessed by the divine powers, Cor Phaeron convinced Lorgar to become his disciple and promptly killed Primordial and his tribe to cover up the boy's identity. Despite enduring Cor Phaeron's vicious abuses, Lorgar fervently believed in the Covenant and researched every aspect of it that he could find, coming to the conclusion that there was a one truth that binded the polytheistic covenant together. Cor Phaeron dismissed such notions initially and often abused Lorgar physically and emotionally. At the same time, Cor Phaeron saw something special in Lorgar and attempted to manipulate him in order to rule over Colchis. Nonetheless, Lorgar remained intensely loyal to Cor Phaeron and even saved his life in a crew mutiny. Lorgar also grew close to those in Cor Phaeron's caravan, which included the captain Axatar and slave Nairo. Despite Cor Phaeron's abuse, Lorgar quickly surpassed his master. He became a devout preacher, his skill in oratory and the power of his charisma winning him many followers, rising to the position of Archpriest of the Gods Worn. After saving Cor Phaeron's life in the crew mutiny, Lorgar was named the new bearer of the word by the priest. Lorgar's fame quickly spread thereafter, and he began liberating slaves across Colchis. However, as Lorgar grew in standing amongst the people, members of the Covenant began to grow jealous of his popularity. Lorgar's youth was plagued by visions of a mighty warrior in gleaming bronze armor coming to Colchis, a cyclopean giant in blue robes standing beside him. At one point, the visions reached such intensity that Lorgar claimed that the prophesied return of Colchis's god was soon to occur. He began to preach this news to the people of Colchis, causing disruptions to the rule of the Covenant as people converted to his beliefs. Lorgar's enemies in the Covenant saw this as the opportunity they had been waiting for to remove the threat that Lorgar was to the status quo, declaring him a heretic. Those who came forward to arrest Lorgar were killed by his followers. The Covenant split into two factions, the followers of the Old Faith and the Brotherhood of Lorgar. Soon, a holy war of immense proportions known as the Schism Wars erupted between them. The war lasted 6 years, and eventually, the entire population of Colchis was forced to choose a side. Lorgar eventually amassed a massive army that marched on the capital city of Varadesh. After a fiery sermon before the city gates, they opened to him with lower priests of the Colchis, presenting the corpses of the Covenant Ecclesiarch and Hierarchs as a gift. After taking Varadesh, Lorgar's forces moved from city to city, taking them either peacefully or in some cases putting everyone to the sword for their heresy in refusing the one. After several years of fighting, the last city to stand against Lorgar's army was Gahevala, which was protected by a dark age of technology-era storm generator. Performing a miracle, Lorgar approached the maelstrom around the city and caused the storm to part, allowing his army to swarm through the gap and capture Gahevala. With that, Lorgar was Lord of Colchis, but proclaimed that they still had much to do. Possibly as part of this conflict, or after it, 1 in 3 of Colchis was said to turn against Lorgar, and the first Great Purge was conducted by the Brotherhood's fanatically loyal warrior monks, hand-picked by Lorgar. Less than a year after the victory of Lorgar's people, a landing craft carrying the Emperor and Magnus the Red, along with 2 tactical squads of Thousand Sons Space Marines, descended from orbit and landed near the temple. Lorgar was said to immediately recognize these people as the ones in his visions and swore his fealty to his father and creator. Every facet of the Covenant's belief structure was reorganized towards the worship of the Emperor as their savior, and the people of Colchis united behind their new god. The elaborate celebrations and displays of piety lasted for months, although it was said that the Emperor did not approve of this, wishing to rejoin the Great Crusade as soon as possible. At the conclusion of the celebrations, Lorgar was made commander of the 17th Space Marine Legion, which was then known as the Imperial Heralds. After assuming command, the chapter was renamed to the Word Bearers. Lorgar led his legion throughout the Great Crusade, the Word Bearers seeking to eliminate all blasphemy and heresy within the new Imperium. Spreading an archaic version of the imperial cult, heretical ancient texts and icons were burned, vast monuments and cathedrals venerating the Emperor were built, and the greatest chaplains of the Word Bearers produced enormous works on the divinity and righteousness of the Emperor, giving grand speeches and sermons to the masses. The progress of the Word Bearers was slow, but domination of the defeated was complete, with regions subjugated by the chapter becoming strongholds of willing imperial zealots. At some point during this period, Lorgar penned the Lectitio Divinitatus, postulating the worship of the Emperor as a divine being. After the heresy, this book would become instrumental in the founding of the modern imperial cult. However, the Emperor was not pleased with the lack of progress the Word Bearers were showing, and was even more dismayed at their religious zeal. The Emperor was a devout atheist, and one of the main goals of the Great Crusade was to spread the imperial truth to free humanity from what he viewed as the ignorance of religion. And so the Emperor personally reprimanded Lorgar, informing him that the mission of the Space Marines was for battle, not faith. Thus, the Emperor ordered the Ultramarines to destroy Lorgar's world-building project on Monarchia. Worse still, the Emperor, accompanied by Robut Guilliman, psychically forced Lorgar and his entire legion to kneel before him, humiliating the Primarch. Lorgar was said to mourn the Emperor's command for a month, speaking to nobody save Erebus and Corpheron, and wearing only hair-shirt robes. The Emperor was about to reprimand the Legion again for their lack of action when news reached him that the Word Bearers had gone back on the offensive, and this time, worlds fell before them in rapid order. It was this event, roughly 43 years before the beginning of the Horus Heresy, that turned the Word Bearers to chaos. Whilst Lorgar brooded over the Emperor's reproach, Corpheron and Erebus, his top lieutenants, whispered to Lorgar of the great chaos gods, beings that welcomed, even demanded, zealous worship and devotion. Lorgar was slowly poisoned against the Emperor by the duo, who were appointed Master of the Faith and First Chaplain respectively. Once the seed of chaos had grown great enough in Lorgar's mind, he tasked the two with converting the entire legion. Meanwhile, Lorgar sought out answers on the spiritual nature of the universe from his brother Magnus. Magnus was born with powerful psychic abilities and had uncovered many secrets of the warp. However, when Lorgar pressed his close brother, Magnus refused and attempted to talk him back from the path he was now on. After having his religious advances rejected, Lorgar flew into a Faustian rage as his brother began to teleport away.
Is there a place where reality and unreality converge? An Empyrean, a heaven that humanity has always misunderstood? A realm where gods and mortals meet? Answer me, Magnus. What are the voices? Who calls to me? If you will not alter your path, then only one thing awaits for you in the stars: misery.
Both of the Primarchs left, knowing they were at a liminal moment in their lives. Although Magnus hardly showed it, he knew that their paths had diverged and that this would be the last time he would see his brother for some time. Meanwhile, a dejected Lorgar decided to go on a pilgrimage to discover the truth for himself. Eventually, Lorgar's psychic abilities lured him and a strike force of his legion to the newly discovered planet of Cadia, insisting he heard a voice calling for him. On the verge of the Great Rift, at the time, Cadia was unknown to the Imperium and native to a local lost fragment population of humans who had come to worship the Chaos Gods in their isolation. On Cadia, he encountered Ingethel the Ascended, a demon prince appointed by the Chaos Gods who showed him the primordial truth of the universe. Ingethel convinced Lorgar that humanity had to accept and welcome the gods of chaos, and failing to do so would have their race share the same fate as the Eldar, who had had their civilization blinked out of existence during the birth of Slaanesh. Finally, after being shown a horrifying vision of the future, which may have been the Emperor on the Golden Throne, Lorgar was finally converted by the ruinous powers. The word-bearers came to venerate the gods of chaos, but instead of throwing their support to one god, they worshipped Chaos Undivided, a pantheon composed of the 4 chaos gods. Lorgar then journeyed with Ingethel the Ascended deeper into the Eye of Terror, where he defeated an Eldar avatar upon a shattered crone world and went on to best the mighty Bloodthirster Angrath the Unbound in battle, a sign he was chosen by the Dark Gods. After the fight, Lorgar met Kairos Fateweaver, the Oracle of Tzeentch, who told him that the Primarch now had a choice. He could achieve either personal vengeance for his shame by slaying his brother Guilliman in the future, but in doing so, doom Horus in his rebellion, or he could put personal satisfaction aside and taste the shame and bitterness forever, but work for the greater goal of illuminating humanity with the primordial truth. Fateweaver made it clear how vital this decision would be, as this was a rare occasion where both his heads spoke the truth. Contemplating his course of action during the last stage of this pilgrimage, Lorgar demanded to see a vision of the future if the forces of chaos lost the upcoming war with the Imperium. Whatever Lorgar saw changed him forever. Now, an agent of chaos, Lorgar dispatched his trusted subordinate Erebus to Davin. There, the first chaplain orchestrated a series of events in cooperation with local Davin Chaos cult priests that saw Horus corrupted by the ruinous powers. The Legion kept their new devotions secret until War Master Horus declared his own faith in chaos and began the galactic civil war, known as the Horus Heresy. The word-bearers quickly joined the rebellion, and many of the worlds they had conquered since their conversion turned as well, having been corrupted by the word-bearers during their conquest. During the Drop Site massacre, Lorgar and his word-bearers revealed their true colors along with the Night Lords Alpha Legion, and Iron Warriors. Lorgar engaged Corax in combat, with the Raven Guard Primarch having the upper hand until the intervention of Kurz. During the Traitor War Council, after the battle on Istvan V, Lorgar encountered the demonically possessed Fulgrim, and in a rage, viciously assaulted the corrupted Primarch. Only the intervention of Horus himself stayed Lorgar's hand, for Lorgar saw total demonic possession as opposed to a shared bond between vessel and demon as a perversion of the natural order. The majority of Lorgar's legion was ordered by Horus to see to the entanglement and possible destruction of the Ultramarines, so that their vast forces could not be brought to bear against Horus's march towards Holy Terror. This was a task the Word-Bearers took up with joy, for as the Emperor had chastised the Word-Bearers for their faith, the Ultramarines had become his favored legion. The assault on Ultramar was led by Cor Pharaon, who swore to utterly destroy the Ultramarines. The Word-Bearers ambushed the Ultramarines at Calth, an attack which eventually turned against them. When reinforcements from the Ultramarines' homeworld Macragge arrived, the Word-Bearers were routed from the system. As the Battle of Calth raged on, Lorgar himself was working with Angron and his World Eaters on Horus's orders during a parallel campaign known as the Shadow Crusade. Aiming to strike at Ultramar in an attempt to distract the Ultramarines in conjunction with the Battle of Calth, Lorgar and Angron were on tense terms at first, with the Red Angel delaying the advance by butchering strategically worthless worlds. However, the two avoided interlegion war when a Xenos Dark Eldar assault unified them against a common enemy. Lorgar, coming closer to his volatile brother, recognized Angron's instability and hidden sorrow over his forced departure from Nuceria, when the Emperor forced him to abandon his comrades mid-slave revolt. He recommended that Angron return to his adopted homeworld to find a sense of closure. Lorgar also had the intention to summon a great warp storm, known as the Ruin Storm, which would cut off the rest of Ultramar from the Imperium. When the two Primarchs arrived on Nuceria, however, they discovered that the slave lords of Nuceria had won and had massacred Angron's comrades. Furthermore, they had told the population of the planet that the Primarch had fled during their last stand, abandoning his brothers to die. Overcome with a blinding fury, Angron ordered that the World Eaters and Word-Bearers purge Nuceria of its population, and Lorgar willingly took part in the slaughter. Eventually, the Ultramarines and Guilliman himself arrived, pursuing the traitors from Calth, and the Lord of Macragge battled first Lorgar, then Angron. However, this had all gone according to Lorgar's plan, who used the immense rage Angron was emitting to begin a Kornat ritual which transformed the World Eater's Primarch into a monstrous avatar of chaos, allowing him to overcome the slowly debilitating effects of the Butcher's nails. Angron then defeated Guilliman, causing the Loyalist Primarch to retreat and allowing for Lorgar to summon the Ruin Storm, fortifying the traitors' advance on Terra against the Ultramarines. Following the Shadow Crusade, Lorgar began to believe that Horus was too weak to lead the forces of chaos to victory over the Emperor. He was disgusted by Horus's refusal to submit before the power of the gods, and had foreseen that Horus would lead the traitor war effort to defeat. Ultimately, Lorgar became secretly committed to killing Horus and taking his place as War Master of Chaos and Anointed of the Gods. Lorgar made his move following Horus's fall at Beta Garmon, appearing on the Vengeful Spirit with Zardu Layak. Though Horus was comatose, he agreed that the traitors needed to be assembled at Ulanor in preparation for the drive on Terra. However, not all of the traitor Primarchs could be found, nor were they all obeying the summons. Thus, Lorgar proposed that Perturabo journey to find Angron, while he committed himself to finding Fulgrim. Using an oracle disciple of Cyrene Valantian as a guide, Lorgar, Layak, and a small force of word-bearers entered the webway in search of Fulgrim. They successfully navigated its treacherous corridors to enter the Eye of Terror, where they found themselves before the Palace of Slaanesh itself. Inside, they found Fulgrim and the Slaaneshi demon Nikari engaged in debauchery. Fulgrim refused to leave his delights and returned to the war effort, which forced the two sides to battle. As Lorgar held off Fulgrim, Zardu Layak uttered the true name of the newly transformed demon Primarch. Layak had learned the name from a ritual Lorgar conducted, and Fulgrim was bound to Layak's will by its utterance. Lorgar now had a pawn with which to slay Horus with, and after gathering the disparate Emperor's children together, the two legions arrived at Ulanor for Horus's muster. Horus had by this point recovered thanks to the sacrifice of Malagurst, and Lorgar revealed his plan to usurp the War Master. After sacrificing large amounts of mortal servants, Lorgar planned to unleash a psychic scream that would disorient Horus, then have Zayak order Fulgrim to attack. The word-bearers and Emperor's children orbiting Ulanor would finish off the sons of Horus, leaving Lorgar in control of the traitor war effort. However, Lorgar's coup quickly fell apart, as Actea had tipped Horus off to his treachery. Upon meeting Horus on Ulanor, Lorgar was immediately assailed before he could unleash his psychic assault, and Zardu Layak freed Fulgrim from his bindings instead of ordering him to attack. Lorgar was beaten mercilessly by Horus, who threw him his weapon and demanded he stand and fight. Lorgar refused to fight, and instead expressed pity at the monstrosity Horus had become since his recovery, consisting of an ever-shifting form with a maw of dark energy at its core. Horus ordered Lorgar to leave his sight, pledging to kill him if he ever returned. The word-bearers under Lorgar's command, who followed Zardu Layak, would continue to serve Horus and would fight and perish during the coming Siege of Terror. Lorgar left for destinations unknown, proclaiming that Horus was doomed to failure due to his weakness. As most of the word-bearers battled across Ultima Segmentum and the rest were led by Zardu Layak to Terra, Lorgar began to wander, gathering a force of his legion and arriving at the primitive world of Isime. The word-bearers were welcomed by its population, and together they began to enact rituals of divination to observe the final battle playing out on Terra. Lorgar resumed communications with Erebus and eventually learned of the death of Sanguinius, which he saw as a portent that spelled the certain death of the Emperor. Lorgar then ordered the word-bearers move out, but not before burning Isime. In the end, the Emperor had been defeated, although he was kept alive by the Golden Throne. Horus, however, alongside his drive on Terra, had been defeated, with the War Master being totally erased from existence at the hands of his father. With the Imperium fiercely triumphant, the Great Scouring began, and the heretical forces were slowly driven back to the Eye of Terror. Here, the forces of chaos were restrained by the Cadian Gates, as the very planet where Lorgar was corrupted was settled and turned into an imperial fortress world. Eventually, the atrocities committed by the word-bearers allowed for Lorgar's ascension to daemonhood, becoming the equal of a god in the eyes of his legion. It is said his birth scream echoed across the immaterium with triumphant vindication, his faith and devotion rewarded with immortality and unbridled power. He has since isolated himself within the Templum Infitio on the demon world of Sicarus, where he has remained for thousands of years, forbidding anyone to interrupt his meditation. Lorgar temporarily broke his exile to aid the word-bearers against a monstrosity that was hunting them. The creature was eventually revealed to be his loyal brother, Corvus Corax, who had become mutated by the powers of the warp during his quest for vengeance against the traitor Primarchs. Lorgar and Corax engaged in a duel once more, with the Raven Lord dominating the engagement and forcing Lorgar to withdraw through the portal he had arrived in. As the portal between them closed, Corax stated that he now had Lorgar's scent and would hunt him down. After 10,000 years of seclusion into the warp, Lorgar is rumored to have finally returned at the close of the 41st millennium and formation of the Great Rift. It is said that he has been seen walking mortal realms in terrible splendor, preaching the word of chaos at the head of a massive word-bearers force. Thank you for listening to this entry from the Warhammer 40,000 Lexicanum.